This is going to be the first of many way too early CFP bracket predictions that I'm going to be doing over the course of this off season. I plan on dropping 4 of these. The final one I do is going to be a week before the season kicks off. So the same teams that you see in this one may not be the same ones that you see in my finalized version. I'm going to give you guys who the hell I have getting in and who is my pick to win a national championship. So I got to give you guys a brief explanation for why I have all of these teams and where I have them seated where they are, starting with Washington at 12. A lot of y'all are really sleeping on Jed Fish. This dude is a fantastic head coach. You saw how badly Arizona fell off with him taking this Washington job. I mean, Noah Fafita didn't even look recognizable, and Washington overachieved year one under Jed Fish because they returned pretty much no production from the team that went to the national championship and lost to Michigan. Those players either went to the draft or they entered the transfer portal. So Jed Fish taking this job so late after the national championship, he wasn't able to use the transfer portal like how he would like to. Now with an off season of him being able to dabble in the portal, Washington already has a pretty good team. They have a good amount of returning production coming back, and you mix that in with the guys Jed Fish is bringing from the portal. Plus, he has a really good quarterback taking over for Will Rogers. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's a baller. He reminds me a lot of Jaden Daniels. Fantastic runner, and when he was in for the brief action in replace of Will Rogers, he was freaking fantastic throwing the ball. He only had one interception to, I believe, 8 passing touchdowns, and he easily is going to be one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten when this year is all said and done. Washington is going to be a really underrated team this year. Look out for them in the Big Ten. I have Oklahoma getting in with the 11th seed. And I know a lot of y'all are probably going to be like, you're crazy for putting in Oklahoma with how bad they were last year. And look, I totally understand the questions that people have about Brent Venables when it comes to how good of a coach is he. We know he knows defense. The defense looked good, but the offense was atrocious. Well, they addressed that in 2 ways. First, they hired Washington State's offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. And then they got the quarterback that replaced Cam Ward and John Mateer, who was, in my opinion, the best player in the transfer portal. He reminds me a lot of Bo Nix. They have a lot of similarities, but he has a way stronger arm, and he's a little bit more elusive as a runner as what Bo Nix is. And they got some really good receivers. Deion Burks returns. Their offensive line should be improved as well. Oklahoma, their season was over before it even started last year. That's what some of y'all don't bring up when you talk down on Oklahoma, but when they came out of fall camp, they were down like all of their starting receivers. They didn't even have all of their starters on the offensive line healthy, and that position was already in flux. So, I mean, listen, with John Mateer at quarterback now, he's going to have a Cam Ward impact on Oklahoma, and you know they're going to have a good defense. So I expect this to be a 10, maybe 11 win team if everything goes right for them. UNLV is the easy pick for the G5 team that gets an auto bid in if they win their conference championship, because Dan Mullen is now the head coach at UNLV. He replaces Barry Odom. Dan Mullen is the best head coach that Florida has had since Urban Meyer stepped down. And, you know, he got fired because of some interest that he had and maybe leaving for the NFL, and with him being always on the verge of winning the NFL job, some of his best coaches didn't stay because he didn't give them enough confirmation or enough assurance that he will remain in Florida, and nobody wants to be left in the dark. But he did a fantastic job at Florida. Wasn't the greatest recruiter, but when it came to on the field standpoint, he produced 2 first round picks. He got Kyle Trask drafted, And then even before that, he was winning at Mississippi State. In the first ever released college football playoff rankings, Mississippi State was number one. He was dominating with Dak Prescott at one point. Dan Mullen is a really good coach, and that UNLV, a team that has a pretty committed NIL backing, Dan Mullen's going to be able to have a lot of success in the Mountain West Conference that is wide open right now. Outside of Boise State, it really is nobody else. Maybe Colorado State, they could be pretty decent this year, but with how the Mountain West looks, UNLV should easily win this conference this season, and they should also be undefeated because they don't play a pretty tough schedule out of conference. So I see them getting in at 10 as an undefeated G5, the only G5 that would get in this year. UNC, I have them seeded ninth. And North Carolina could be what Indiana was last season under Kurt Cignetti. Look, North Carolina has brought in some pretty solid recruiting classes. Not Alabama, Georgia, Texas level, but relative to the rest of the ACC, they have a top 3 roster in that conference. And with what they're bringing in out of the transfer portal, the 16th rated class, they're going to have enough talent that with Bill Belichick's coaching experience, they're going to be able to take advantage of a pretty easy path to the ACC title game. Your only 3 toughest games are Clemson and on the road against NC State, who's coming off a down year, and then you play Syracuse, who has to replace Kyle McCord. So there's a really realistic situation where we're looking at maybe a one-loss UNC team playing an undefeated Clemson team, or maybe they're undefeated if they're able to beat Clemson because they do play them at home. So maybe we're looking at a North Carolina team that gets in with maybe 1 or 2 losses max. Bill Belichick gives this team an elevated advantage with how well he's going to have them in situations late in games, and the fact that they're going to be a team that now can play some respectable defense. They won't be giving up 70 against JMU. I like UNC to get in. Penn State is at 8. They return a lot of good players from their playoff run this year. Drew Aller should improve with the wide receiver additions that they're bringing in from the portal. I like Penn State to probably be like the second or third best team in the Big Ten this year, but they definitely are going to be more powered up than what they were previously in 2024. 7, I have Alabama getting in their second season under Kalen DeBoer. Look, y'all may not believe in Kalen DeBoer, but I do still, because the man's a winner. Everywhere he goes, he wins. Last season wasn't just the worst season Bama has had since the first year of the Nick Saban era. It also was Kalen DeBoer's worst year as a head coach, and I put all the blame on Jalen Milroe. He just wasn't good. When you can't throw the football and you're just a run-first quarterback in a system that just produced a Heisman finalist and a top 10 pick, you're the problem. When Kalen DeBoer can win everywhere, but he gets to Bama, he's struggling, I give him somewhat of a pass. Alabama still has one of the best rosters in college football. They still do have pretty good depth with how well they have recruited. They also bring in some few key transfers as well. Yeah, nobody knows what they're going to do at quarterback, but nobody knows how good Ohio State's quarterback situation is going to be. Nobody knows how good a lot of the teams people have projected in the top 10 are going to be when it comes to their quarterback situations. We got a lot of new faces. People got Georgia getting in, and how good is Gunnar Stockton? We don't know. But I like Alabama to get in, man. Y'all kind of sleeping on Kalen DeBoer. Yeah, he lost the teams he had no business losing to, but Alabama showed up against all but one team that was ranked last season, and that was Tennessee. Kalen DeBoer is a winner. In his last year, he beat Steve Sarkisian in the semifinals. He's beaten Kirby Smart. He's beaten Brian Kelly. He's beaten some of the best coaches in the SEC. So I like Alabama to shake back and get into the playoffs this year. At 6-5, I got Oregon and Georgia. Georgia had a down year for their standards just because they didn't have a lot of depth, and they were just in survival mode for all of last year. And coming into this year, they should be right back to what they were before 2024. They should have good depth. They got better wide receivers. They got some young receivers that they didn't really play last year that could break out. And I believe in Stockton at quarterback. You know the defense is going to be good as well. That's Kirby Smart's expertise. Oregon, same way. I don't know how much production they have coming back from last year's team, but it really doesn't matter. They just buy their squad out of the portal. They get all of the best players out of high school. They buy all of the best players out of the portal. Hell, they're buying some of them off, lower teams. They're buying like some of the best players off some of the best G5 schools. So Oregon, it really doesn't matter who they have coming back. But with the quarterback situation, you got Dante Moore. Just how good is he going to be? I expect them to at least be, 70% of what Dylan Gabriel is, because he does get the boost from their offensive coordinator, Will Stein. And defensively, I still don't know about them, because their defense against Ohio State, the 2 times they played, was a major disappointment. And even when they played Penn State in the Big Ten championship, the defense could have been better. But when it comes to the auto biz, these are the teams that get a first round bye because they win their conference. I got Iowa State winning the Big 12. Iowa State returns a lot of last year's team. And a large reason why they kind of started to struggle during the middle portion of the season was because they had a lot of injuries. But when they played Arizona State in the Big 12, they got their ass kicked in the Big 12 title game. But they did beat Miami in the Tart Bowl, for what that's worth. And Matt Campbell is one of the best program builders in the sport, and Iowa State doesn't recruit at an insanely high level. So normally when they return so much production like they do this year, they have a great season, because, it takes them 1, 2, 3 years to rebuild from a great season. So this is the year that we see Iowa State make a run and they get into the playoffs. Clemson, I have them winning the ACC. I think that they will go 1-1 with North Carolina. I expect them to play North Carolina twice. They played them on the road in the regular season in Chapel Hill, and they have to play them again if they see them in the ACC championship game, which I think is more than likely. But Clemson at worst probably has 1 loss. I expect them to beat LSU when they play them early during this season. This is the best team that Dabo Swinney has had since they last were in the playoffs. Well, before the playoffs expanded to 12. They have a lot of guys who contributed, who were underclassmen, who are upperclassmen now. And that's why Dabo Swinney, after the game, he was in high spirits. He said, this year was just, foreshadowing of what's to come. Good receivers, Cade Klubnik. Oh my goodness, he was throwing seeds against Texas. Cade Klubnik has finally arrived, people. And you have the best coaching staff in America, with you just hiring Tom Allen as your defensive coordinator, and you have Garrett Riley in year 3 as the offensive coordinator. Clemson is going to be a monster this year. And I got Texas and Ohio State at 1 and 2, because they may be 2 of the richest programs in college football, with the way that they just find ways to get all these great players out of high school, great players in the transfer portal. Nobody really cares about Ohio State's quarterback situation. Somebody's destined to be good. And with how they recruit and get guys out of the portal, they're just going to reload. They constantly put guys into the NFL. I'm not worried about them losing Jack Sawyer when you return Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, the 2 best players in college football. And then for Texas, you got Arch Manning. You're winning the SEC championship. You are. Just like Ohio State, you have a lot of money invested into your team. You recruit phenomenally. Use the transfer portal phenomenally. This is the year that maybe Steve Sarkisian gets over the hump, but this is just my quick, explanation for why I have all these teams and why they are seeded where they're seeded. So now I'm going to give you guys my predictions round by round. In the first round, when it comes to the matchups, we got Washington taking on Georgia, Oklahoma versus Oregon, North Carolina on the road, and Happy Valley against Penn State, and UNLV has to travel to Tuscaloosa. I have Georgia taking down Washington. It's hard to win in Athens, and plus, Georgia just has a great team, just too much for Washington to handle. Give me North Carolina over Penn State. Yeah, I know it's hard to win in Happy Valley, but you really trust James Franklin to lead Penn State to a playoff win over Bill Belichick? Do you know how insane that is? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Give me North Carolina in that one. I just like the coaching advantage just with them having Bill Belichick. Oklahoma, Oregon. I like Oregon. Like for Oklahoma to get to this point, you know it shows that John Mateer probably was a Heisman finalist. He definitely was at the Heisman ceremony in New York. And the defense played exceptionally well. It's just that Oregon, they just get better and better every year. The bankroll continues to get bigger. They should be able to take care of Oklahoma, especially with this being played at home at Autzen. And of course, Alabama's going to take care of UNLV just because of the talent discrepancy and the home field advantage. Quarterfinals, Iowa State versus Georgia. We got UNC versus Texas. Ooh, we got Bill Belichick versus Arch Manning. Remember the rumors about when Bill Belichick first took this job, Arch Manning could go to Chapel Hill? I don't know if them were rumors or just internet created speculation, but we got Clemson versus Oregon and Ohio State versus Alabama. I'm taking Georgia over Iowa State. I could see Iowa State maybe giving Georgia a little bit of a scare for the first half, and then the second half they just pull away. Just got too much. Give me Texas over North Carolina. Texas with their talent advantage over UNC, and plus you know like Steve Sarkisian isn't Bill Belichick, but it's like he might be able to somewhat hold his own in some capacity because you got to have the Jimmies and Joes in college football to win, even if you are Bill Belichick. And Texas just has too many Jimmies and Joes where North Carolina probably will have to play damn near perfect to win this game. Texas is advancing to the Final Four. I'm taking Clemson over Oregon. Look, man, Clemson, this is their year that they come back and they show their face to the college football world that we still are a staple when it comes to what a championship program is. Now, you know they did have a few years when they were out of the playoff picture, but that was more so due to Dabo's stubbornness. He now has embraced the transfer portal. He has embraced name, image, and likeness. He's spending money to get big coaches. Maybe Clemson's you know NIL backing, and maybe their alumni stepped up. Maybe that was holding them back. Maybe we don't know, but I like Clemson over Oregon in this one. I like the quarterback advantage. I like Clemson's defense against Oregon's offense. Tom Allen is a really aggressive defensive coordinator. He's already seen this Wolstein offense before. He'll be prepared for it. And I like Ohio State over Alabama. I got a lot of respect for Kalen DeBoer. There's a good chance that he could win this game. We could see Alabama in the Final Four this year. But, you know, with everything that Ohio State is bringing in, you know, at quarterback, they got some really good quarterbacks. And this is really a game that could be a coin flip, really. But I give Ohio State the advantage because you do have two of the best players in college football that can definitely flip a game like this late. Semifinals, Georgia versus Texas, SEC versus SEC. And then for our second semifinals, we got Clemson versus Ohio State, ACC versus Big Ten. I'm going to roll with Texas over Georgia. I can't see Steve Sarkisian losing to Kirby Smart for a third straight time if it happens. I couldn't see him losing to Kirby in the SEC championship, or if they have to play again in the regular season consecutively. Like, he's bound to get one over Kirby. Kirby Smart was in a similar situation with Nick Saban. Eventually, he got one over Nick Saban, even though Nick Saban owns him. So I like Texas to get this one done. Arch Manning is going to be more prepared for the pressures that Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp like to send. Quinn Ewers, the dude was a definition of mid. Texas is going to the national championship. give me Ohio State over Clemson. Look, I'm drinking and I'm galloping gallons of the Clemson Kool-Aid this year, but not enough to have them beating Ohio State. So we got a rematch of the semifinals matchup from last year between these two teams in the playoffs. The only difference is that this is for the national championship, and they also play each other early during this season as well. So they don't played each other 3 times in a year at this point. Crazy what the expansion of the college football playoffs has done. But look, I expect these programs to be two of the best this season. They got two of the best rosters. The quarterback play should be good enough for whoever's going to be behind center at Ohio State. And Arch Manning, man, like I think he might end up being the one. He definitely should be as good as what the last name would suggest you to believe he will be. And I like Texas to take down Ohio State and win it all this season. So everybody, this is my first of many way too early 2025 CFP bracket predictions that I will be dropping. I'll drop another one during spring. I'll drop another one like in June and July, and then I'll drop my final one a week before the season begins. But I know all of you guys are probably going to agree with those. Sound off in the comment section.